Has anyone in your life ever looked at you and said, "You don't know everything"? If that's ever happened to you, you're in good company. That used to be a line I heard a lot in my younger years. I was quite the know-it-all in my early 20s, and wouldn't you know it, in my clinical practice, I work with a lot of people who've had that experience too. So if you've ever heard that line, you're not alone. But I would encourage you, and maybe in the message today, I would like to impart to you something that wise people shared with me in my recovery and healing process, which is listen and learn. Right? We live in a day and age where information is accessible everywhere. All you got to do is go on Google, turn on the internet, and you can find information, and that's wonderful, right? The next step to obtaining that information is to listen to it, to engage with it, to learn from it. All right, and once you've done that, then the objective is not to go and spread that information to people who don't want it. All right, I think the important thing to remember about mental health, the important thing to remember about things like recovery, the important things to remember about making change, is that those things are for people who want it, not for people who need it. You know, when I talk with my clients about 12-step recovery programs like AA or programs like Al-Anon, I remind people that those programs are programs for people who want it, not for people who need it. Because if those programs were for people who needed it, then they'd be filled to the brim and it'd be standing room only, and virtually everybody we know would probably be in those programs. But they're for people who want it. The same way therapy is for people who want it, not for people who need it. And so one of the most common aspects I see in my clinical practice that I talk with both sides about is when you have a loved one who's struggling and the thought is, I'm going to tell them you need therapy, that's the worst idea, right? And I would encourage against it, because people don't go to therapy because they're told to go to therapy. They go to therapy because there's enough desperation, there's enough distress in their life, or they know for themselves that they want to make that change. And it's a powerful point, right, when we think about listen and learn, right? Because maybe there is someone in your life where you're listening to this and think, so-and-so does need therapy. Well, maybe what we need to do for that person is listen to them and learn why they're struggling. And what a compassionate thing. It doesn't mean we co-sign their negative behaviors. It doesn't mean we go along with whatever it is that they're struggling with, but maybe we could better listen and learn what the struggle is that they're going through, and then take care of ourselves in that. See, I used to think, man, I had all the answers and everybody else was the problem, and what I found is that I wasn't asking myself what my part in the struggles were. And when I started to do that, I started listening to people. I started learning about myself. And I watch clients in my clinical practice for years and years now do the same thing. When they're really, truly ready to change, when they want to change, they listen to people no matter what walk of life that person's coming from. If they're working on themselves and they have something valuable to say, people are listening who want to change. And they're learning about themselves. And that's a big takeaway with listen and learn, is that when you start to listen to whoever it is that's making positive changes in their life, you learn so much more about yourself. And I would encourage that that's the objective. We want to learn as much about ourselves as we can so that we stay out of destructive patterns ourselves. See, if one of the things I've learned in life is that when I'm around people who are having problems, the biggest question I have to ask myself is, why am I there? Why am I there? And what I found is that when I started asking those questions of like, why am I engaged with these people that I don't agree with their morals and values, I started associating with people who had better morals and values based on my own orientation to the world. And the way I did that was by watching people who I respected, right, who I thought were living peaceful lives, who I thought were living healthy lives. How are they doing it? And then I listened to them. And I learned about myself in the sense of like, what was I doing that was contrary to what they were doing, and how could I change that? And what I found is that that's a pretty painful process. And an important thing to listen and learn about ourselves is pain is a growth opportunity. So if you start associating with people that you respect who are living peaceful lives, and you start to make those changes, and you feel discomfort, distress, or pain around those changes because you have to change your social circles, because you have to change behaviors that you've been engaged in for a long time, because you have to change the way you think about yourself, that pain will lead to growth in your life, and none of us escape that pain, right? Even the person in our lives who we look at them and they've engaged in the same behavior for 20 years, right? Even that person has had growth opportunities. They've just chosen to ignore them. And that's a big part of the therapeutic process, is getting people to open their eyes and stop ignoring the problems if they want to. You know, and I really want to stress that. We've talked about that in other videos. You have to want to change. And so you have to want to listen and learn. Because if you don't want to change, you don't want to listen and learn, then it doesn't matter how much you respect another person. You're not going to learn from what they're teaching you as to how it applies to your life. And so I would encourage you today, you know, to listen to people that you respect. Right? And if you don't respect anybody in your life, find some people who do. You're in the wrong rooms if you don't respect anybody in your life. And also that's understandable in a way, right? Just because you don't have anybody in your life right now that you respect doesn't mean you can't find those people. And so there's a growth opportunity. Get yourself out there, find people that you respect, that you could listen to, that then you could apply to your life and learn some lessons about yourself. And I can't guarantee that that won't be painful, but if it is, the good news is you're in for a growth opportunity. And that's not always a fun thing to hear, right? But growth opportunities at the end of the process, at the end of a growth opportunity, that's a fun process to be able to look back and see, look, here's where I started and here's how far I've come. And I would encourage you, if you're listening to my content and listening to stuff like this, to get yourself into that process. If you're not sure how to get into that process, as always, I would encourage you to look into therapy. You can look into all kinds of, I would say, internet sites to find therapists. A big one is Psychology Today. You could go to my website as well, alanhyde.com. And all kinds of online platforms exist too. If you're not wanting to go into a therapist office, you could do those things online. I practice virtually. And I would encourage, you know, therapy is a really wonderful place to grow. If you're struggling today with substance use, an unmanageable problem, or an addiction, I would encourage you to find a 12-step program. Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, they're free programs. I would encourage you to look into them for sobriety and recovery. If you're a friend or family member of someone who struggles with substance use or an unmanageable problem with substances, I would encourage you to look into the program of Al-Anon. It is a free program, and those people are sharing solution and answers as to how to take care of themselves when their loved ones are struggling with substances. But those are just my thoughts. I'd love to hear more of yours in the comments below. We look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.